Picture this. The bell rings, leather shoes squeak on polished linoleum floors, and the smell of chalk dust fills the air. Classrooms hum with the low murmur of students learning cursive, memorizing multiplication tables, and passing notes under the desk. The 1950s were a different world, one where school rules were strict, sometimes strange, and always rooted in the values of the time. Today we're looking at 10 American school rules from the 1950s that would shock kids today. Buckle up because these rules might make you laugh, scratch your head, or wonder how anyone survived school back then. 1. No dresses above the knee. In the 1950s, modesty was taken very seriously. Girls' skirts and dresses had to reach at least the knees, sometimes even longer. This wasn't just about fashion. It was about maintaining discipline and decorum. Teachers often measured hems with rulers, marking skirts that didn't comply. Boys, of course, were expected to wear collared shirts and pressed trousers every day. The rule reflected a time when appearances were tightly linked to respect and obedience. Any deviation could lead to being sent home or receiving a stern lecture. Today, this would seem over the top, as most schools have embraced comfort and self-expression. But back then, breaking the dress code was almost like breaking a social contract. It was serious business. Students learned quickly that appearances mattered as much as grades. The rule gradually faded as society's standards of modesty and gender expectations relaxed. But for a kid in 1955, a hemline could make or break your morning. 2. Boys must wear shirts and ties. While girls faced skirt rules, boys were under strict uniformity as well. Shirts had to be tucked in, collars stiff, and ties properly knotted. No loose or casual clothing was allowed. The reasoning? Teachers believed proper dress cultivated respect and focus. Walking into a classroom without a tie was a guaranteed visit to the principal. Boys spent extra minutes in the morning adjusting their collars, and some even borrowed ties from friends if they forgot theirs. This rule reinforced the idea that school was serious business, almost like a job you had to prepare for. Over time, casual dress codes and jeans in classrooms made this rule obsolete. Today's kids would likely roll their eyes at the thought of mandatory ties for algebra class. But back then, it was a rite of passage and a mark of maturity. It taught punctuality, responsibility, and, oddly enough, patience. No talking without permission. One whisper could get you in trouble. Classrooms were hushed sanctuaries of learning, and raising your hand was mandatory to speak. Talking out of turn was considered disruptive, disrespectful, and worthy of punishment. Some teachers even had silent bells or used paddles for enforcement. The goal was complete attention on the lesson. No chit-chat, no distractions. In the 1950s, education was seen as a serious endeavor, and classroom decorum reflected society's strict expectations. Today, classrooms encourage discussion, collaboration, and debate. Kids now might find the silence oppressive or even scary. But students back then knew the rules and accepted them as part of growing up. It created a sense of order and predictability. For many, it's a fond memory of structure, even if it sounds harsh now. 4. Boys and girls sat separately. In many 1950s schools, boys and girls weren't just disciplined differently, they were physically separated. Boys on one side of the classroom, girls on the other, sometimes even in separate rows. This was thought to reduce distractions and promote moral behavior. Teachers believed that close proximity might lead to mischief, so a literal desk divide was the solution. In some schools, different bathrooms, hallways, and even lunch periods kept the genders apart. This rule reflected societal beliefs about propriety, gender roles, and the importance of keeping young minds focused. Over time, as ideas about co-education and equality evolved, this practice disappeared. Kids today might find it ridiculous or even discriminatory, but in its day it was simply the normal way to teach. 5. No chewing gum. Chewing gum in class was a serious offense. Teachers saw it as disrespectful, messy, and distracting. Students caught with gum were often scolded, made to throw it away, or even disciplined publicly. Gum on desks, floors, or books was considered a sign of laziness or poor character. This rule reinforced personal responsibility and cleanliness. For 1950s kids, learning to follow it meant practicing self-control. Today, many schools allow gum or even sell it in vending machines. Kids now might giggle at the thought of a no-gum policy, but for students back then, it was a matter of pride to follow the rule. It taught attention to detail, and maybe a little patience too. 6. Stand when speaking to teachers. Respect was displayed physically. When a teacher entered the room or asked a question, students were expected to stand. This showed attention, obedience, and readiness to learn. Sitting while answering was considered disrespectful, and sometimes a quick slap of the ruler reminded students of this rule. Standing wasn't just a gesture, it was a performance of discipline. Today, standing up to speak might seem unnecessary or even silly. But back then, it created a sense of ceremony, a rhythm to daily school life. It reinforced hierarchy and manners, values highly prized in the 1950s. Teachers expected it, and students knew it well. A child who forgot could be instantly reminded and probably embarrassed. 7. No running in the halls. Hallways in 1950s schools were polished and echoing. Running wasn't just dangerous, it was considered reckless and disrespectful. Students were told to walk in single file, hands at their sides, eyes forward. This prevented accidents and maintained decorum. Teachers patrolled corridors to enforce the rule, and public reprimands were common. Today, kids might find it frustrating to be forced to walk slowly, but back then, it emphasized patience and respect for shared space. It was about safety, order, and learning self-control. Schools became places of discipline as much as learning. Over time, the rule relaxed, replaced by common sense caution and a little trust in students. 8. No hats indoors. Hats were a staple of 1950s fashion, but inside school buildings they were strictly forbidden. Removing your hat was a sign of respect and proper manners. Students often had to take them off as they entered the classroom or hallway. Forgetting could lead to a pointed reminder from a teacher. This rule extended to coats and gloves in some schools, reinforcing a culture of respect and attentiveness. Today, the rule seems quaint, as hats are often part of casual wear or self-expression. Back then, it was a matter of etiquette and a daily ritual of adjusting behavior. Kids learned early that manners mattered in every setting, not just at home. 9. Silent lunchrooms. Lunchtime wasn't always the rowdy social hour we know today. In some schools, students ate in silence or with whispered conversation. The idea was to promote good manners, prevent fights, and encourage gratitude for the meal. Lunch ladies and teachers supervised quietly, ensuring kids behaved. No shouting, no running, no throwing food. Today, cafeterias are lively hubs of social life, and silent lunches would feel oppressive. But in the 1950s, it was about discipline and respect. Kids learned patience, gratitude, and control, even during meals. It was just another way school prepared them for the real world. 10. No talking back. Finally, the golden rule of 1950s schools: never talk back to a teacher. Questioning authority was considered insubordination. Students were expected to answer politely, follow instructions immediately, and avoid sarcasm. Defiance could lead to detention, corporal punishment, or a public lecture. Today, encouraging questions and debate is standard. But back then, respecting authority was non-negotiable. It shaped behavior, built a sense of hierarchy, and taught humility. Kids knew that their words carried weight, and speaking out of turn had consequences. Over time, changing attitudes about education, dialogue, and child psychology made this rule obsolete. Still, for those who experienced it, it remains a defining memory of 1950s schooling. School rules may have changed, but looking back at the 1950s reminds us how much society, manners, and education have evolved. From stiff ties to silent lunches, these rules tell stories of a world both strange and charming, strict yet strangely comforting. If you enjoyed this stroll through the hallways of the past, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, because there are plenty more stories waiting in the pages of history.